The first thing I saw was her phone on the patio table, face up, buzzing nonstop. Not in her hand, not in her purse. Just lying there, lit up with a dozen messages popping up from a name I didn't recognize. Cole with a lightning emoji. She wasn't around, but her laugh was. It came from somewhere inside the house. High-pitched, careless, like she wasn't someone's wife, like she wasn't mine. I shouldn't have walked through the gate. That wasn't part of the plan. I was supposed to stay in the car, text her when I got there, act like everything was normal, but something was already wrong before I even left our driveway. She'd changed her outfit 3 times, told me not to wait up, said the party was lame, yet put on heels she hadn't worn since our wedding rehearsal dinner. So yeah, I showed up at 9:30. She told me 10:30, an hour. That's all it took for the reality of my marriage to start crumbling like wet plaster. There was no music outside, just murmurs through the walls, broken by occasional laughter. Warm lights pulsed behind the curtains. It was the kind of house where people go to forget they have responsibilities or husbands. I stepped inside. No one noticed me at first. I guess I looked like one of them. Khakis, collared shirt, awkward energy. Half the guys in there were either talking about Bitcoin or pretending to care about someone's golden retriever. And then I saw her. She was in the kitchen, drinking straight from a wine bottle. Barefoot now, sitting on the counter with some guy standing between her knees. He said something and she threw her head back in laughter. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard since we were still sharing toothpaste. She didn't see me, but he did. He clocked me the moment I crossed the doorway. His eyes narrowed like he was doing math. He didn't move, though. Just kept one hand on her thigh like he had every right to. That's when it hit me. She brought him here. This wasn't some spontaneous thing. This wasn't a moment. This was planned. I stepped backward like the air had become too heavy. My shoulder bumped a shelf. A wine glass fell and shattered at my feet. That's when she looked up. Her smile evaporated so fast it looked like someone flipped a switch. She froze. He didn't. She slid off the counter, clumsy, like her knees forgot how to be legs. "You're early," she said, as if that explained anything. "You're barefoot," I replied. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just stared at her like I was trying to see a version of her that no longer existed. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I turned and walked out. Back to the car, still holding my keys, still holding on to some twisted idea that this was salvageable. But even in the silence of the driver's seat, I could still hear her laugh. The fake one. The one she used with him. It echoed like a warning I never listened to, and it hasn't stopped since. I didn't drive away right away. I sat in the car, parked 3 houses down with the engine off, and my fingers still clenched around the keys like they were the only thing keeping me grounded. I didn't even look at my phone. I just stared at the glowing dashboard and listened to the soft ticking of the cooling engine, pretending that if I stayed still long enough, time would reset and I could do this whole night differently. I saw her silhouette through the windshield maybe 10 minutes later. She came out of the house, shoes back on, hair gathered up like she was trying to look presentable again. The guy didn't come out with her. She walked with purpose, but not grace, like someone trying to act sober when they aren't. When she reached the passenger door, she hesitated. Her hand hovered above the handle like she was asking permission. I unlocked the doors. She slid in silently. I could smell the wine on her breath before she even said a word. But what really hit me was the perfume, not her usual one. This was sweeter, louder, one I didn't recognize. I wondered if he liked it. I wondered if she wore it for him. "Thanks for coming," she said softly, like I hadn't just caught her with another man's hands between her knees. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because anything I'd say would have come out too calm, too broken, or worse, too forgiving. She looked at me, searching my face for something. A cue, a crack, a way back into the lie. "It wasn't what it looked like," she began, and I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the most unoriginal, tired, soulless thing she could have said in that moment. I turned to her finally. "You're going to try that line? Really?" She blinked. "Arthur, just listen. I had too much to drink. He was being flirty and I made a mistake." "You invited me to pick you up from the place where you were planning to cheat on me. That's not a mistake. That's choreography." She didn't deny it. She just looked away. There was a long silence before she spoke again. Quieter this time. "I didn't think you'd come early." That was the part that shattered me the most. Not that she cheated, not that she kissed him, not even that she lied. It was that she only cared because she got caught. She wasn't sorry, she was sloppy. I started the engine. We drove in silence. She kept her arms folded, her body turned away from me like I was the one who invaded her privacy. When we pulled into our driveway, she didn't move to get out. Instead, she turned to me, eyes glossy. "Can we talk about this inside?" "No." Her expression hardened. "So, that's it? You're not even going to try to hear me out?" I turned off the ignition and faced her completely. "I showed up an hour early and found you kissing a man you clearly knew well enough to sit on a kitchen counter with your legs around him. You didn't pull away. You didn't push him off. You looked happy. And now you're trying to spin this into something less ugly so you can go back to pretending this marriage is fine." "Arthur, I've been lonely too." That stung more than I expected. Maybe because part of me believed it. Maybe because I knew I'd let my guard down for too long, said yes too much, lost my spine somewhere in the comfort of routine. But loneliness doesn't excuse betrayal. Not like that. Not in my house. Not with that smile I saw her give him. "Then why didn't you tell me?"
I got out of the car and walked around to open her door. She sat there for a few seconds before stepping out like she was doing me a favor. Inside the house, it felt too quiet, too sterile, like all the warmth had been vacuumed out. She went straight to the bathroom, probably to cry or fix her makeup. Who knows? I stood in the hallway staring at the framed photo of us from last fall. It was from a wedding we attended in Vermont. She had her arm around me, and I looked proud. I wondered if that guy had seen that photo, if he'd walked through our home when I wasn't around, if he'd touched things that still had my name written all over them. Later that night, she came into the bedroom with her eyes red and voice small. "I'm sorry," she whispered like a kid caught stealing. "I really am." But all I could think about was her text from earlier. "Can you come 11 instead? It's still going strong here. LOL. Still going strong." That line kept looping in my head like a broken record. And for the first time since I met her, I slept on the couch, not out of anger, but because I couldn't bear to be next to someone who made room in her life for a man with his hand on her thigh while her husband waited in the car, thinking he was being thoughtful. Morning felt wrong. The kind of wrong that clings to your skin even after you shower, even after the coffee starts brewing. The house was still, but not peaceful. Clara moved through the kitchen like a guest, trying not to disturb the owner. Barefoot, hair still damp, her robe tied too tight like she was trying to hold herself together with knots. She didn't say good morning, Neither did I. Instead, she slid a mug toward me, with her head down, as if caffeine could erase the night before. The only sound in the kitchen was the hum of the fridge and the spoon clinking against the ceramic as I stirred out of habit, not because I wanted the sugar. I didn't even take a sip. "I called in sick," she said, barely louder than a whisper. "I didn't think I could go in today." I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I didn't care. She stood there waiting, but I didn't ask her to sit. She didn't apologize again. She didn't explain. She just waited like I was supposed to fix the script so she could step back into the role of wife again. After a few more minutes of silence, I finally asked, "How long?" She didn't pretend not to know what I meant. She didn't ask me to clarify. "Since September?" That was 3 months. 3 months of secrets. 3 months of hand-picked lies, choreographed nights, calculated texts, and moments where she chose someone else and still came home to me, kissed me, thanked me, asked me to pick up paper towels on the way back from work. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. I already knew what mattered. That he wasn't a mistake, he was a routine. And I was what, Clara? The errand boy? I muttered, not entirely intending to say it aloud. The Uber driver you kiss on the cheek while your real night ends with someone else's hands under your dress. Don't. She snapped, too fast, too raw. Why not? It's all true, isn't it? Her voice cracked when she spoke next. I didn't mean for it to get that far. It was supposed to be harmless. You don't end up on a kitchen counter with your legs around someone in a moment of harmless, I said. She covered her face. I thought she might cry again, but nothing came. Maybe even the guilt had burned out overnight. I don't know why I did it, she whispered through her fingers. That's what broke me. Because I knew why. Because I'd seen it before. Not in her, but in other people. My parents. My sister's marriage. The difference between love and comfort is razor thin when you don't talk about the things that ache in silence. I'd stopped asking Clara questions months ago because I thought space was respectful. Turns out, space just made it easier for someone else to step in. But she didn't trip into an affair. She invited it. She wore new perfume, changed her passwords, laughed louder at jokes that weren't mine, smiled at texts she quickly turned face down on the table. And all the while, I thought we were just in a rut. I left the kitchen and went to the bedroom. I didn't say where I was going. I just needed space without the silence of her presence choking it. I grabbed my laptop and started opening bank statements. If this was the end, I needed to see what else had been hidden. And that's when the real gut punch landed. One account, the joint savings we were building for a trip to Seattle, was $4,800 lighter than it should have been. 4 transfers, all labeled event support, spread across 3 weeks. I scrolled back. Clara had been careful not to take big chunks, just enough to go unnoticed. Just enough to cover what? Dinners? Hotels? Gifts? I stared at the numbers, cold and mechanical on the screen, while my heart tried to catch up to the betrayal. When I heard her footsteps approach the doorway, I didn't look up. I kept the screen open, let her see it herself. "What is this?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. Then, he was between jobs. It came out so casual, like she was explaining a service fee. My head snapped toward her. "You used our savings to fund your affair." She looked away and I saw it, that flicker of shame. Not because she spent it, but because she got caught. Twice now. First in the moment, now in the trail. I stood slowly, not because I was trying to intimidate her, but because my body physically couldn't hold still. This was for our anniversary trip, The one you said we should delay because you were too busy." She folded her arms, defensive now. "You think this is all just black and white? You think I planned this because I hate you? I've been exhausted, Arthur. You don't see how absent you've been."
The words hit like a slap. Not because they weren't partially true, but because she used my loyalty as a weapon. Turned my efforts, my predictability, my quiet love into an excuse for betrayal. "I was absent?" I echoed. "Because I didn't micromanage you? Because I let you have your space? That's not absence, Clara. That's trust." She walked out, and I let her, because if I kept going, I was afraid I'd say something I couldn't take back, or worse, forgive something I never should. I spent the rest of that day not crying, not yelling, just staring at our wedding photo on the wall. She was in white, I was in navy, and behind our smiling faces was a quote we'd asked the photographer to add: "Love always finds its way back." I took the frame down, turned it over, and put it face down in the closet. Some things don't deserve to hang on the wall anymore. I didn't say a word to her the next morning. Not because I was being dramatic, not to punish her. I just didn't have anything left. You can't pour from an empty cup, and mine had been drained dry, flipped upside down, and cracked down the middle. She slept in the bedroom. I stayed on the couch. I heard her cry once, sometime around 3 a.m. It wasn't the kind of sobbing you hear in movies. No gasping, no broken apologies whispered into a pillow. Just a dull, pitiful sound, like she was mourning something that had already been dead for a while. By noon, she was gone. She didn't leave a note, no text, no call, just took her keys, her phone, her guilt, and walked out. I didn't chase her. I didn't even stand at the window to watch her leave. If anything, I felt relief. Not because I wanted her gone, but because her presence had turned our home into a crime scene. I spent the day cleaning. Not a tidy-up. I wasn't in denial, but because it was the only thing I could control. I stripped the bed she'd slept in, washed the sheets in silence. I found one of her earrings behind the nightstand, tangled in a dust bunny. I tossed it into the trash without thinking. It wasn't until I opened her laptop that I realized how little I actually knew the woman I married. She had left it on the dining table. I knew I shouldn't have opened it, but for a few seconds I hovered over the lid like it was a ticking bomb. But curiosity and betrayal is like a disease. Once it starts, it doesn't stop at the surface. There wasn't a password. She must have assumed I'd never look. Or maybe she forgot, too comfortable in the idea that I'd never question her. Her email was open, not her main account, a secondary one I didn't recognize. A Gmail address with a name I'd never seen before, buried under some alias she must have used for work, or worse. The first email was from him. Subject line: "Thursday was perfect. Still thinking about you. That dress, that perfume, that laugh. I'm going crazy waiting for the next time. Should I pick you up again? Or is the chauffeur back on duty?" He put that in quotes. Chauffeur. That was me. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't believe the casual cruelty. I was a joke in their private world. A footnote. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what came next. An email dated 2 weeks ago from her to him. Subject: Seattle trip. I told Arthur the anniversary trip was too expensive. He bought it without a fight. I'll reallocate the money over the next few weeks so we can book the cabin. Still working on excuses for the time off, but it's happening. I need this. I need you. That word, reallocate, like our marriage was a corporate spreadsheet. I shut the laptop so hard it made the salt shaker on the table jump. Seattle. That had been our dream. A coastal cabin, cozy fireplaces, the rain outside while we read in silence, just being near each other after years of drifting. I'd spent late nights running overtime to afford it, and she turned it into a romantic escape for two, minus me. I didn't call her. I didn't scream. I sat in the same chair, staring at the now closed laptop, and felt a quiet coldness settle in me. Not rage, not even sadness, just a clean, clinical detachment that I'd never known I was capable of. That evening, she came back, keys jingling softly, trying not to wake the guilt. She walked in like nothing had happened, like the weight of her betrayal was something we'd eventually file under a rough patch. I was still at the table, still waiting. She froze when she saw me. "You haven't moved. You lied about everything," I said. "Even Seattle." She blinked, caught between panic and denial. "What do you mean?" I slid the laptop across the table toward her. "That other email account? The one where you joke about me like I'm your intern?" She didn't touch it. She just looked down at her hands, like they belonged to someone else. "I read it all, Clara. I know about the cabin, the money, him. I was going to cancel it," she whispered. "No, you weren't." Then I said something I didn't plan to say. Not yet, anyway. "I've contacted a lawyer." That made her look up fast. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. No protest, no plea, just breath. "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to wait for you to decide when you're done using me as your fallback plan. I've been loyal, I've been patient, I've been invisible. And now I'm done." She stood there like someone realizing they were the only one left in a room after the music stopped. She didn't beg. She didn't explain. She just sat down slowly across from me. "You think this makes you strong?" she said, voice shaking. "Walking away?" "No," I said. "I think staying made me weak." She nodded once. "He won't take care of me the way you did." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, he won't. But you didn't want a partner, Clara. You wanted an audience." And I finally stopped clapping. Clara didn't leave that night. She stayed in the house, claiming the guest room like it was neutral ground. I didn't fight her on it, not because I wanted her there, but because I needed to see who she became when the spotlight of her lie was gone. She didn't cry. She didn't lash out. She barely looked me in the eye. It was like I'd turned into the inconvenience she had to step over on the way to her next chapter. The next morning, I found her sitting on the couch with her laptop open. She'd brewed herself coffee, none for me. She was in a crisp white sweater I hadn't seen before, which probably meant he bought it. It still had that new stiffness, and I could smell his cologne faintly in the threads. "Are you really going through with a lawyer?" she asked, eyes still on her screen. I didn't respond right away. I just leaned against the doorway, studying her like a stranger who had broken into my home and started redecorating. Finally, I said, "You spent months rewriting our marriage while I was still showing up for it. I'm not going to be the guy who sticks around after the credits roll." She shut the laptop. "You don't understand what it's like being married to someone so passive." I laughed once. "You mean quiet? Or maybe boring, right?" She shrugged. "You never fought for me. I never thought I had to." The silence between us thickened like smoke. She looked away, probably because I'd just said something too real, the kind of truth that doesn't come out unless everything's broken. I walked away before she could say anything else. My phone buzzed as I reached the hallway. A text from a number I didn't have saved. "Arthur." I know you don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Clara. I froze for a moment. I thought it was him. Maybe the guy she was with had some sick urge to taunt me, rub it in. But the name that followed the next message left me staring at the screen stunned. My name is Eliza. I'm his ex-wife. I stepped outside and called her immediately. The phone rang once before she answered. Arthur? Yes, I got your message.
I didn't want to get involved, but Clara doesn't know when to stop, and neither does he. I sat on the porch steps, suddenly leaden. You're talking about the guy she's been seeing? Yes, she replied. His name is Cameron. We were married for 7 years. I divorced him last year. And if she thinks he's loyal to her... She trailed off. I waited. What happened? He has a pattern. He targets women who are already in relationships. He gets off on the secrecy, on the thrill of ruining things, then he disappears, always leaves just before the fallout. I wanted to warn you when I found out he was seeing someone married, but I didn't know it was Clara until recently. And then I saw your name in the contact. She was stupid enough to sync with a shared calendar. She sighed. I know it's weird, me calling, but trust me, he'll be gone soon. You won't even have to lift a finger. I couldn't speak. The rage I'd buried was surfacing, not because of what he'd done, but because she'd let it happen willingly. I'm sorry, Arthur, I really am, but I promise you, you are not the first man she's tried to replace. She hung up before I could thank her. I stayed outside for another hour, my thoughts racing, my stomach turning, and then something in me clicked, not out of anger, out of clarity. When I went back inside, Clara was in the kitchen again, making eggs, like nothing happened. I sat across from her. You ever ask Cameron if he was married before? I asked. She stopped cracking the second egg. Her shoulders tensed. What? His ex-wife says hello. Nice woman. She says you're not exactly the first. Her face paled. I watched the calculation in her eyes, that desperate mental math. She hadn't known, and worse, she didn't care until now. You went digging through my life? She snapped. No, I said. He left the shovel in your purse. She stepped back from the counter like she'd been slapped. So what? You think this makes you better than me now? No, I said again. It just makes me sure I don't want to be anything like you. The front doorbell rang. I stood and went to answer it. It was a courier. He handed me an envelope. I signed for it, opened it without thinking. Inside, a printed contract from the law office. I'd emailed draft divorce papers. She walked into the hall, her eyes narrowing as I read the first few lines. You already started it yesterday, I said. She blinked. You didn't even ask me. You gave up the right to be asked when you made me the punchline in your secret inbox. She stood frozen, jaw twitching, trying to summon tears that wouldn't come. The performance had ended. The audience was gone. She was just Clara now. Not the confident party girl, not the seductive risk-taker, just a woman who bet on a liar and lost everything. I want half, she whispered finally. That's when I smiled for the first time in days. You'll get what's fair, but I wouldn't count on his help. Word is, he's already packed his bags. She looked at me like I'd stabbed her with truth. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Freedom. Clara didn't speak to me for the next 2 days. The only sounds in the house were the clink of her fork on her plate and the occasional slam of the door when she thought I was nearby. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I didn't move quietly. I didn't tiptoe around her moods or pretend we were still in some kind of limbo that might heal. I'd given her all the chances in the world to tell the truth, to come clean, to own what she did, and she spat on every one of them.
But I hadn't told her everything either. After Eliza's call, I hadn't just let it end there. Something kept gnawing at me. Something about Cameron. Not just that he was a serial affair artist or emotionally manipulative. No, it was the way Eliza spoke about him. The way Clara trusted him so easily, like she'd fallen under some spell. So I started digging. I didn't do anything illegal, Just the kind of digging that anyone with basic curiosity and a little pain in their chest could manage. I started with public records. I found out Eliza had filed a restraining order against Cameron 6 months before the divorce. Emotional coercion, financial manipulation, 2 documented cases of workplace harassment, both closed quickly with quiet settlements, and 1 former employer who had fired him for undisclosed reasons, which, based on a Reddit thread buried in a local news forum, may have involved a much younger intern. And then I found something else. 2 days before Clara's party, Cameron had filed a rental application, not in our city, not even our state, a 1-bedroom loft in Denver, lease date the following Monday. He was already gone. When I saw the date, I laughed. One of those bitter, joyless laughs that scrapes the back of your throat. Clara had no idea. She betrayed everything we built for a man who never intended to stay. She'd rewritten the ending of our marriage for someone who'd already packed for the next chapter, and she was still under the illusion that she held the cards. I waited until Sunday night to tell her. I waited until she was sitting on the couch with her phone in her lap, staring at the screen like she was hoping it would explain everything for her. She looked up when I walked in. No fight in her, just a tired woman in yesterday's makeup and a robe she'd forgotten how to tie properly. "You're waiting for him to text, aren't you?" I asked. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. I tossed the printed lease onto the coffee table. She flinched when it landed. When she leaned forward to read it, I watched the blood drain from her face like a faucet had opened inside her chest. "You knew? For 2 days now? You didn't say anything? You didn't ask?" Her eyes locked with mine, wide and glassy. "He said he was just taking time. He told me he needed space to figure things out." "And you believed that?" Her lip trembled. "I thought maybe he'd rescue you from the mess you made, and now you're stuck with the ashes and the one person you thought you'd never need again." "Arthur, stop!" "No," I said, my voice level. "You don't get to Arthur stop me anymore. You don't get to shut me down like that. You asked me to pick you up from a party, and when I got there early, I caught you making out with the guy who was halfway out of your life before you even texted me. That's who you chose over me. That's the man you built a fantasy around while stealing from our savings." She covered her mouth and looked down. I didn't know if she was about to cry or throw up. I didn't care. "You think I'm boring? Fine. You think I'm quiet? Fine. But I was loyal. And loyal doesn't mean weak. It means I trusted you not to burn down the house while I was out buying the nails to fix the roof." She stood suddenly. "You don't know what it's been like being with you. I know I wasn't enough for you, and I've made peace with that. But you know what I was? I was real, and he wasn't." She stormed into the guest room, and for the first time, I didn't follow. But the story didn't end there, because Monday morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me swipe. "Is this Arthur Keller?" "Yes." "This is Officer Wyatt with the Denver Police Department. Are you familiar with a man named Cameron Ellis?" The breath caught in my throat. "I know of him. Why?" "He listed you as a professional contact on a rental form. We're conducting follow-ups due to an incident. I'm not at liberty to discuss the full details, but Mr. Ellis has been taken into custody pending further investigation. We just needed confirmation you weren't a cohabitant or financially involved in any lease agreements." "What kind of investigation?" I asked. A long pause. Then, "Multiple identity fraud claims. It's not the first time. We're looking at several aliases and women who may have been victims." My skin went cold. Clara hadn't just been used. She'd been targeted. "I have no financial connection to him," I confirmed.
but I know someone who might have been involved. Would you be willing to pass along our contact information?" "Yes, absolutely." After the call, I sat there in silence, piecing it together. All this time, I thought she'd broken my heart for another man. Turns out, she'd broken it for a lie and a well-tailored jacket. I walked to the guest room door and knocked once. When she opened it, her eyes were red and puffy, her phone in hand. Still no message. He's not going to call, because he's in jail. Her knees buckled, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small. I felt finished. The funny thing about watching someone unravel is that it doesn't happen in the dramatic way movies like to show. There's no screaming into pillows, no throwing plates, no thunderstorms outside as a metaphor. Real unraveling is quiet. It's pathetic. It's slow. I saw it begin in Clara's knees when I told her he was in jail. I saw it again the next morning when she sat at the kitchen table, with both hands wrapped around her phone like it was an anchor. No makeup, hair like she hadn't slept, just sitting there refreshing the same messages that never came. And that's when the emails started. Not from him, not from Eliza, from the others.
I made a decision that night after the call from the police. I forwarded the officer's contact to Clara. I didn't do it out of spite. I wasn't trying to punish her. I did it because she needed to wake up. She needed to understand just how far from reality she had wandered and how deep into someone else's con she had truly fallen. She never said thank you, but she started checking her email again like it was a lifeline, and within 24 hours, the trickle became a flood. First came Emily S., subject line, "I saw your name mentioned in an old thread." Then Sarah from Portland, who had apparently dated Cameron Ellis when he was going by Derek Vaughn. And then Mara, who attached actual bank statements from a shared account where he drained her of $7,200 before vanishing. Each story more unhinged than the last. Same man, different name, different city. Always the same pattern: charm, seduction, intimacy, vanish. He never stayed longer than 6 months, and every time he left, he did it cleanly. No social media trail, no loose ends, just new women, new lies, new versions of himself. Clara said nothing. She didn't reply to them. She didn't cry. She just read and stared. And somewhere in all that silence, I realized she wasn't sad about losing him. She was mourning the fantasy she built in her head. She fell in love with a reflection, a shadow of a man projected through attention and danger and adrenaline. And now she was stuck with the real version of herself, the one who cheated, lied, and threw away a decade of marriage for a man who saw her as nothing but a pit stop. She didn't leave the house for 3 days. I did. I went back to work. I met with my lawyer. I started untangling my finances, canceling joint accounts, moving my name off the lease. But the thing that really changed everything came from a place I never expected. My sister, Jane. We hadn't spoken much over the last year, mostly my fault. I pulled away. Clara had always said Jane was too nosy, and I listened. But when Jane heard what had happened, and she did because news like this moves faster than shame, she showed up on my doorstep with 2 iced coffees and a manila envelope. She hugged me tight and whispered, "You should have told me sooner." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. Over coffee, she slid the envelope toward me. "I don't want to make this worse," she said, "but you should know something." Inside were printed screenshots, texts from a mutual friend of hers and Clara's, messages exchanged months ago, well before the party. "Clara, I think I finally met someone who makes me feel alive. I don't feel trapped anymore." Friend, "What about Arthur?" Clara, "He won't leave unless I give him a reason. Maybe it's time I give him one."
I felt the room tilt. All this time, I thought the betrayal was spontaneous, a slow burn that became a fire. But this was planned arson. Jane looked at me carefully, gauging my reaction. I'm sorry, I didn't know she was serious. I thought she was just venting. She was laying the groundwork, I muttered. She wasn't just cheating, she was crafting an exit. And for the first time, I stopped feeling sorry for her. That night, I told her to leave. She was in the living room, curled up in a blanket, laptop open on the same thread of messages from Cameron's victims. When I said her name, she looked up, hollow-eyed and pale. You need to go. Where? She asked. That's not my problem anymore. She sat up slowly. You're really doing this now, after everything I've lost? I tilted my head. You lost what you threw away. You just didn't expect to land alone. She blinked back tears. I was wrong, Arthur. You were cruel. I didn't want to hurt you. I swear I didn't think it would go this far. You wanted to hurt me just enough to make me let go, and when I didn't, you escalated. Silence. Then she said it, the words that finally cemented the end. I thought you'd fight harder for me. I stared at her, baffled. I fought every day to keep us alive. I gave you peace, stability, forgiveness, but you were bored. And instead of fixing what we had, you went chasing chaos. You mistook drama for depth. You thought intensity meant love. She was shaking now. Her phone buzzed, probably another message from another woman detailing another lie. I pointed at the suitcase already packed near the door. Go. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just grabbed the handle. As she passed me, she paused. Where will I go? I looked her dead in the eyes. Anywhere but here. She left quietly. No scene, no tears, just a shadow walking out of the house she helped poison. I locked the door behind her. Then I turned off the lights, sat in the darkness, and breathed for the first time since that party. I really breathed. The house was still again. But this time the silence didn't hurt. I woke up the next morning and realized I wasn't waiting for a door to slam, for keys to jingle, for a lie to be delivered in a soft voice. The air felt clearer, the rooms brighter. Even the floorboards didn't creak like they used to when I tiptoed around her moods. I made coffee. Just one mug. And it tasted better than it had in weeks. Divorce isn't a happy thing. Nobody grows up dreaming about sitting across from a lawyer to unbind what took years to build. But sometimes the most freeing moment isn't the one where you walk away. It's the one where you let go of the expectations, the resentment. The question that kept haunting me, what did I do wrong? Because now I understood I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd simply given my heart to someone who didn't know how to hold it. And that wasn't my shame to carry anymore. 2 weeks later, I was at a bookstore, of all places. Not because I needed anything in particular. I just wanted to be around shelves again. Stories, voices, characters that didn't betray you halfway through. I wandered through the nonfiction section, not really looking, just letting my hands drift over the spines. That's when I bumped into someone. Literally. She dropped her tote bag. I bent down to help her pick it up, and we both laughed awkwardly like strangers do when life nudges them into each other. I'm sorry, I said. Didn't see you coming. Same, she smiled. Though I guess that's what makes these things interesting. Her name was Darcy, a photographer, Recently moved to the city to start over after, in her words, betting on the wrong person for too long. I almost laughed out loud at the symmetry. We talked for an hour beside the biography section. She asked about my favorite books. I asked about her favorite place to shoot. Neither of us asked about the past. Not yet. It wasn't time. But when she smiled, it wasn't performative. It wasn't hiding something behind it. And when I said goodbye and walked away, I felt lighter. Like maybe not now, not this second, but eventually I could love again. 3 days later, I got a message. Darcy here. That book you recommended, I read it in one sitting. Want to grab coffee and spoil the ending together? I replied almost immediately. Only if you promise not to lie about how it made you feel. She responded with a laughing emoji, then a heart. So yeah, that's how this ends. Not with revenge, not with someone crawling back begging for another chance, not even with dramatic closure. Just me breathing again, smiling again, and starting over.